What are some interior design questions you need the answers to? We're talking about the 10 most asked interior design questions I get, and I'm going to give you my expert opinion. Before we get into today's video though, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and check me out on Instagram. And I want to say a huge thanks to Fiverr for sponsoring today's video, but I'll tell you more about them a little bit later on. Let's get into today's video. So the first question of the day is, what are the steps you have to take when designing a room? So I do have an entire YouTube video on the steps of how to design a space, so I'll link that up above. To break it down really simply, the first thing you have to do when designing a space is to measure. You need to know what you're working with. Sometimes we have these grand ideas for a room, and when I mean sometimes, I mean I'm just talking about myself. I have these grand ideas, but the room is too small to accommodate them. Now that you have measured, you need to do an inventory of the items you already have. What do you already have? What are you going to part with? What are you going to donate? What are you going to keep? You need to know what's staying in the room because that will inform what you're going to add to the space. Step 3 is to figure out your design style. You can figure out your style by taking online tests. You can look at the furniture you already have and kind of let that inform your design style, but figure out your design style. Step 4 is to use those measurements and that pre-existing furniture and your design style to figure out what other pieces you're going to add to the room. And then 5, you're going to style the space. So those are the basic steps for designing any room, and those are the steps I take each and every time. And if you do so, I promise you, designing a space is going to be so much easier. The second question I get asked all of the time is, how do you visualize your interior design ideas? To visualize rooms, I love mood boarding and using renderings. They are a must. This way, I'm able to see what the products I love would look like all together, so that I'm selecting furniture pieces that complement one another. This is something that I definitely encourage you to do when you're designing your spaces. And if you need help in doing so, I recommend checking out Fiverr. And I do want to say a big thanks to Fiverr for sponsoring today's video. Fiverr is a marketplace for digital services that connects you to a wide variety of freelancers. So, if you need help with 3D renderings or mood board, there's a freelancer on Fiverr for you. They also have freelancers that specialize in editing, website creation, logo creation, pretty much anything you're looking for when it comes to design, business, or otherwise. It is Black Business Month, and I want to talk a bit about using Fiverr as a business owner. Owning a business is a dream come true. I never ever thought I would become an entrepreneur. Since my business's inception, I have used Fiverr countless times to assist with 3D renderings while designing. I'm a one-woman show, and they have saved the day every single time because I simply can't do everything by myself. My job involves designing for clients and designing for myself. And since I don't always have time for the latter, I work with this freelancer to develop a design for my living room. Based on the design, I knew that I wanted to add a television and change the space's orientation to feel more welcoming. It was easy choosing a freelancer because there are tons of reviews on Fiverr and they have extensive experience. Plus, I was able to message back and forth with the freelancer until we came up with something that was perfect. As I continue to grow my business, I will continue to use Fiverr to meet all of my needs. And without Fiverr, I wouldn't be where I am today. Be sure to check out fvrr.co/DIY with KB to check out the services available to you and get 10% off with the code DIY with KB. Now let's talk about the next frequently asked design question. Question number 3. How wide should a walkway be? So I'm not talking about your hallways, right? Because those sizes are already predetermined. But how much space do we need to enter a living space, right? It's not 1 foot. It's not 2 feet, it is 3 feet of space. Now, some people say 2 feet, but I want you to give yourself 3 feet of space so that you're not accidentally like jamming your hip or your knee into a sharp piece of furniture, because there is no pain like that type of pain. It is awful. When you have 3 feet of space, people can easily come in and out of a living area or a dining area or whatever the area is. You not only want a space to be easy to maneuver just for the sake of ease, you also want it to be easy to maneuver for safety reasons. If there is an emergency, you don't want to have to feel like you have to jump over top of your furniture to get out of the living room, right? But you just want to make sure that there's enough space to walk comfortably. This next question is a question I see every interior designer and stylist on all the platforms get asked regularly. And that question is, should your sofa touch the wall? Now I'm looking over at my sofa and it is currently touching the wall. But the actual answer is no. Your sofa should not necessarily touch the wall. You want to leave at least, 4 to 6 inches of space between your sofa and the wall. The reason that we do this is because it just actually creates this illusion that the space is larger than it actually is. That is the benefit of leaving space between the sofa and the wall. Another reason you commonly see people do this is because they want to put like a console table or something like that behind the sofa. I don't find that that is always necessary. I think you should only use a console table or any type of table behind your sofa if your sofa is floating in the space, meaning that there is no wall near the backside of that sofa whatsoever. Another good reason to leave the space is just for like fire. Like if you have radiators or heaters or vents or anything like that on the floor, you want to make sure that they're exposed so that you can have the air circulation for the vents and that you don't have your nice furniture touching a radiator because that's very dangerous. But we want to keep the sofas off of the wall, not only for the looks, but also for the sake of safety. Question number 5. Can I have both blinds and curtains? So I think that the answer is yes, but I think that that is a controversial answer. So curtains are really powerful because they provide you with privacy, they kind of shade you from the sun, and they look good. So they're decor, something practical in 2 ways, all in one. And there is nothing better than that. A lot of times people feel that curtains do not provide adequate privacy. And the ones that do provide adequate privacy are too blackout, right? You don't get any sun and you hate that, right? So the middle ground is normally adding blinds and curtains. And I'll be honest, I think that you can do that. Blinds are great. They give you absolute privacy, so I understand why you want to have that. So yeah, you can go ahead and do it. The better solution, in my opinion, actually, is to use blackout curtains or curtains that are very light filtering and sheers, right? So you can actually double up on a curtain rod. So you can have one in the back, one in the front. The one in the back will have the sheers. The one in the front will have the light filtering curtains. That means you can get the privacy with the sheers, right? It will give you enough privacy so that people can't see you if you're walking around in your underpants in your house, right? Because that is a very, very valid concern. But it will still allow a lot of light to pour into your home so that you're not upping that electricity bill and you get to benefit from glorious natural light. But you still get privacy, and when you want all privacy, you can just close those light filtering curtains and you will be good to go. So you'll get the decor, you'll get the safety, and you don't have to invest in blinds. That's something I definitely want you to consider doing, but the real answer to the question is yes, you can combine curtain and blinds. The next question is, how do you mix metals? So mixing metals is something that can be very difficult to do, and it's very controversial. A lot of people hate it, and when I say hate it, I mean they will write like a long paragraph about why it is the most offensive thing on the planet. But I believe you can mix metals and you can do it successfully. I just think for every piece of gold you add, you also need to add silver, right? You have to make sure that it's very, very well balanced. But when you're selecting metals to mix, you have to remember that gold and silver aren't the only metals, right? You have chrome, you have steel, you have rose gold, right? You have the different variations of gold, and you have to look at the color wheel. So you have warm metals and cool metals. And the easiest way to mix metals is to mix the cool metals together and then mix the warm metals together, right? Because they complement one another because they have the same undertone when it comes to warmth. But the fact of the matter is that people love to mix gold and silver, so just be sure to balance it and make sure that it's not all gold with one silver accent, because that silver accent will really, really, really stand out. So as long as you balance it, you'll be good to go. The next question is, how many light sources should a living room have? So I'm going to say 3, and I'm going to tell you what those 3 are. The first light source you should have is natural light, at least in your living room, right? If you have a choice of the rooms in your house, choose a room with natural light for your living room. I don't care if you have to turn a bedroom into your living room and make someone sleep in the living room. I need you to have natural light in there. We don't want it to feel like a dark cave. We don't want that for a living room because we spend so much time there, and having natural light is really good for your mental health, and design is all about psychology. The second source of light should be some overhead lighting. So whether you have track lighting up in your ceiling or you have a chandelier, an overhead pendant, you need to have some form of overhead lighting. Third, you need to have some form of task or ambient lighting. So whether that's a large floor lamp or some task lights or some sconces, you also need to have lights there as well. Now, I will say you should even have more lights because I love ambient lighting because I think it's sexy, it's cool, it's inviting. It makes you want to spend time in a space, and we should want to spend time in our home. But as long as you have those 3 types of light, you will be good to go. So the 8th question is, what is the one splurge in the living room that will make the space look super expensive even if everything else is super affordable? So I will say that this answer, there's no hard and fast rule or hard and fast answer because it really depends on what you select. But I think there are 2 options here. The first thing you can buy that will really elevate your space is the sofa. Because if you have a sofa that has beautiful track arms, it's really sophisticated, it's really well structured, that will elevate any piece of furniture. I think the sofa will go a really long way. Plus, if you're investing in a high quality sofa, not only does it look good, but it feels good. And the way your furniture feels deeply impacts whether or not it is perceived as feeling and looking expensive and luxurious. The second option is actually something that I never thought I'd say, but the thing you could splurge on that could really elevate your entire room is actually a rug. Now, I don't always recommend that people splurge on rugs because there are so many incredible, affordable options for rugs these days. But when a rug is really nice and intricate, it has a bunch of detail, it can really carry a space because you see really bold rugs in really minimalist space, and those spaces look phenomenal. So if you do want to invest in one thing, or your family invested in something and you want to acquire that family heirloom, maybe start with a rug. A really high quality rug will instantly elevate your living room no matter what. So the 9th question that I get asked all of the time is, how do you choose a color palette? And it actually isn't something all that random. And I know that's probably what you were expecting. You just kind of choose a color and go with it. It used to be that way, but this is the easiest way to do it. Look at the color wheel. And you're probably saying, Kiva, I have not looked at the color wheel since I was in kindergarten and they forced me to look at the color wheel. Well, I'm forcing you again today, so just call me Professor Brent. I like the sound of that. But when you're looking at the color wheel, there are 3 main ways I would probably suggest in finding a color palette. The first way is to look at complementary colors, and those are colors that are directly across from one another on the color wheel. An example of that would be blue and orange. You're like, I don't want a blue and orange room. That's totally fine, but that is how you would use the color wheel. The next way to come up with a color palette using the color wheel would be able to look at triadic colors. So that would be colors that kind of form a triangle on the color wheel. An example of that would be blue, red, and yellow. Another way to form a color palette using the color wheel would be to do analogous colors. So those are colors that are sitting right next to one another on the color wheel. That is the easiest way to find colors that work with one another. So choose a color that you love. So say you love green, and then use any of those 3 ways to select other colors to work with it. Now that doesn't mean that, say I want to do complementary colors and I've chosen blue, that everything else has to be orange. It doesn't mean that at all. That means you can have blue and black and white, and then if you want a pop of something else, then you would use the orange. It can be an accent color. It doesn't have to be a primary color used in the space. Other really common color pairings, of course, are black and white, black, white, and gray, pink and green. But again, a lot of these derive from the color wheel, so I recommend giving it a look. The final question that I get asked all of the time is, Kiva, my floors look orange. What can I do about that without spending an arm and a leg on new floors? So this is a great question because floors are incredibly expensive and I don't know why, and I want to file a formal complaint, but I don't know who to complain to. But orange floors are very common, especially in older homes. The way you actually want to tone down orange colors or any really warm colors is to add a cool color. So, and a good example of this would be a makeover that I just did at my friend's house. Their floors were orange. They were orange. And the way we were able to tone these floors down was to add some blue on the wall, because blue has a blue undertone because it's the color blue, right? So it is a cool tone and it cools down that orange, right? The same thing would apply for floors that are too orangey, too red, or too yellow. Okay, you guys, that is it for today's video. Those were the top 10 interior design questions I always get asked, and I hope I was able to answer all of your burning questions. If you have any more or other burning interior design questions, be sure to let me know down in the comments, and I would be more than happy to answer them for you. If you liked today's video, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and check me out on Instagram. If you are interested in checking out Fiverr, be sure to check out fvrr.co/DIY with KB to check out the services available to you and get 10% off with code DIY with KB. Until next time, have a beautiful day.